This podcast brought to you by All Weather Decks. Let All Weather Decks create your outdoor living space. Decks, patios, roofs, pergolas, walls, and fire pits, large or small, give All Weather Decks a call at 913-206-1974 or go to allweatherdecks.net.
All right, I'm going to ask you, Nathan, who is this? You know I do this like 5 times a show, right?
It's the Rolling Stones.
God, why did I not recognize it right away? Okay, now I got it. I haven't heard that one in a long time, though.
It's one of the lesser ones, but I love it.
It doesn't get played on the radio
at
all, ever.
Which is sad because it's good.
Yeah. I love just about anything by the Rolling Stones. We were driving up yesterday. By the way, this is the program, Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. It is Labor Day. My name is Brad Porter, filling in for Seren Petro. You can follow me on Twitter, at Brad K. Porter. Nathan Wilhelm is running the show, better known as Beards McFly. I was driving up north of the river yesterday to go have lunch with my dad and his wife. And my oldest son, my 17-year-old, he's got, I don't know, Spotify, one of those things. And he's got a lot of stuff on there that I wouldn't think a 17-year-old would have. He's got quite a bit of Rolling Stones on there.
It's because they're good.
And then he played American Pie by Don McLean. And, of course, there's a couple of Rolling Stones references in there, if you believe that that's what he's referencing, because Don McLean has never come out to explain what the song is about or who he's referencing in the song, but you can kind of figure it out. It's a great song. Anyway, I'm sure you wanted to hear all that. Got plenty more show still here to go in the final 3 hours. Coming up at 3:30, Kevin Romery, our friend in Lawrence, is going to join us. Talk a little college football, and Kevin and I always get way off track, so who knows where that conversation is going to go. At 4 o'clock, our good friend Blaine Howard is going to join us, country music singer, songwriter, artist. He's coming to Kansas City on September 9th at the KC Live at Power and Light. So we're going to talk about a couple of his new songs, including a new Chiefs song called Take It Back. Last year was Run It Back. This year it's Take It Back. So we'll have Blaine on at 4 o'clock. At 4:30, we'll kind of kick around some stuff. We might have some Chiefs or Royals sound. And at 5 o'clock, former Chiefs corner Eric Warfield is going to join us. He's on the Chiefs Concerns podcast along with former Chiefs tight end Jason Dunn, and is hosted by Marcus Dash. And we'll give you a quick update on the Royals right now. The Royals lead in Baltimore 3-2. Bottom of the ninth with 2 outs. Baltimore has a runner on first. Scott Barlow is trying to close it out. That was an odd scheduling thing that they did to the Royals, because they played Sunday in Kansas City and then had to jet out to Baltimore to play a day game, losing an hour. And it's kind of odd. That's not an easy trip to make. Yes, they're well-paid athletes. That's what they get paid to do. I'm just saying it ain't easy. All right, joining us now on the line is Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. Nick, you're part of the 41 relay team today. Mick Schaefer was on with Josh Briscoe earlier. Then we had Aaron Ladd on to kick off our show. We've got you on the show now, and in between, I guess you could put Richard Baldinger in that category because he's been on Sunday Sound Off a few times over there at 41. So that's 41 people for you.
Well, what can I say? We have an expansive sports coverage. That's all I can tell you.
Yes, you do. Well, this is the great time of year for the sports department, and I know you and Todd Palmer do a great job on the 4th and 1 podcast, but we're finally done. You know, the roster's at 53, although they're going to fiddle with that, probably going up until Saturday or Sunday, whatever the deadline is. The practice squad is set at 16, but they're going to mix with that as well. But now it's time to stop looking at all that, although we still will. It's time to actually start talking about games that matter, and that's what we have less than 1 week from today.
Yeah, I mean it's finally here. It'll be a long stretch. It'll feel like a long stretch, especially with that 17th game thrown in this year. And I know it's kind of weird for everybody. I'm sure it's weird for you and people listening that just having this essential bye week in between that final preseason game, it was nice to have, but at the same time, it's weird because you're used to hitting the ground running with college football and Chiefs being in the same weekend.
Absolutely. It's a disjointed start to the season when you're going to be going more than 2 weeks without playing a game, from that last preseason game, the no 4th game, and then coming up this Sunday against Cleveland. That's a long time to go between games.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sure the players appreciated a little break there to kind of reset for the weekend. And I know I saw some Chiefs players at a couple of college football games, so I'm sure it was nice for them to just kind of have a little miniature break before the grind of the NFL season begins and trying to get back to the championship.
All right, we're speaking with Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. We've spent a lot of time on this show today, Nick, talking about the offense, and I know you love offensive line players, but I'm going to save it for a couple of minutes, okay?
No, that's fine.
Okay, I'll save it for you, but I promise you'll get it. You'll get a comment on the Chiefs' offensive line. We haven't spent a ton of time on the defense. I hit on the defensive line with Baldy, with Chris Jones moving outside, and he'll be moving around. He's not just going to be a defensive end. He'll be moving around depending on what they want to do. With Jaron Reed coming in from Seattle, with Derek Nottie playing well, and Frank Clark still trying to figure out what you get from week to week. Mike Dana's back. He's been impressive. And so you've got some pieces there that could make this a very potent group. And I left out Tershawn Wharton, too, but this could be a very powerful group as we go through the course of the season.
Yeah, the defensive line rotations actually, coming into camp, I was a little nervous about it, but, I mean, after being up there at camp for a handful and watching preseason, it was one of the things that you could check off the list, and I see why the Chiefs didn't have to go out there and get more aggressive with what they did along the defensive line. Because, like you said, on the interior, I mean, Reed being there and Wharton being there, those two combined allow the flexibility to put Chris Jones outside because they have a good pass rush interior with those two guys. And then Colin Saunders stepped up in training camp, so that gives them a third guy for the rotation. Derek Nottie gives them a very, very reliable run-stuffing one tech, so he's able to play those roles on first and second down, and if they're short yardage, potentially in the run game. But then they have a really, really strong rotation of pass-rushing defensive tackles. And I personally, I kind of expect, unless it's a certain situation, I expect Chris Jones to actually play a lot more defensive end than I thought going into training camp, just because of how dominant he was in games and then also in practice. I mean, the thing for Chris that he's going to have to think about is getting better at bootlegs, not crashing down on the backside, and then also just kind of staying at home on reverses. Because I fully expect the Browns and a lot of teams to test his discipline early, given how high energy and high motor of a guy he is about getting upfield and getting upfield quickly. So that'll be interesting to see. And then Mike Dana really stepped up in training camp, and he's kind of showed why they drafted him. And he's looked a little bit quicker. He had really good rushes against Orlando Brown and some against Niang whenever I was watching him. So, yeah, in terms of that, I'm actually encouraged with that collective defensive line to where they've got enough guys to where they won't tire out like they did at times last year in their rush.
And it kind of like the offensive line, depth is what we were looking for, right? They came away from training camp in the preseason with more depth in the defensive line, right?
Yeah. Last year it seemed like unless you had Chris Jones, Frank Clark, Wharton, and Nottie out there, like you weren't going to get a pass rush consistently. But now they've got it to where there's easily 6 or 7 guys that they 100% can put out there, and they can actually get an routinely effective rush.
We're speaking with Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41, and he's also co-host of the 4th and 1 podcast with Todd Palmer. You can follow him on Twitter at Jacobs71. You'll find lots of good stuff and conversation on the 4th and 1 podcast as well as his Twitter account. Quickly on Chris Jones, I don't want to spend a lot of time because he's being discussed as a possible Defensive Player of the Year candidate. We know what we have in Chris Jones, but I kind of like what they've done because, and Seren uses this term all the time. Are you rooting for your prediction? I don't root for predictions. I just say what I think, and if it comes out that way, great. But a couple of years ago, when the Chiefs started to use Chris Jones a little bit more at the end position, not as his primary position, but throw him out there, a handful of times a game. I kind of watched and I said, I like Chris Jones on the outside. I think he's really good. And, some people are like, yep, I think you're right. Other people are like, no, he's not going to be moving to the outside. And then you watched him last year and again progress. I'm like, no, this is really good stuff. And now he's being talked about as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. I'm telling you, I think a lot of people, it wasn't just me. I'm not patting myself on the back over here or throwing a parade for myself, but I think there were people who saw this coming 2 years ago, and now you're going to see something really special from Chris Jones.
Well, I think what'll be interesting is whenever offensive tackles get used to his pass rushing rhythm, when it gets to that third and fourth quarter after they've kind of seen all his moves and his speed, and they've adjusted to it since he's going against much more athletic offensive linemen. I'm very curious to see what changes he makes, what adjustments he makes as a rusher but to be effective. And then also the benefit that's gonna happen for him is if they do kick him inside on pass rushing down to defensive tackle, it's going to be really tough for those guards to stop him because they don't have that. They aren't used to his rhythm and his speed throughout an entire game. So if the Chiefs sneak him in on a crucial third down inside, he's gonna shoot the gap and get right through him and be able to make that sack, and he's going to be even more effective inside just because he didn't go against them down after down, and he's going in on an obvious long down and distance pass rushing down against them. So I think that's where Chris could really shine in the interior. On the outside, like I said, I'm going to be curious to see. I think he's going to get a lot more doubles. I think teams are going to test him early on, but then I see him bringing a tight end or a running back over there or a fullback or bring a tight end to pull from the opposite side. There's going to be so many things I think you're going to try to where he's going to get doubled on a routine basis. So he may not put up the numbers like you're saying in terms of being a defensive player, but the attention he would require is warranted with somebody like an Aaron Donald, like him, like Khalil Mack a couple of years ago. So, I mean, that alone is going to give a lot of opportunities for one-on-ones for his teammates and also open up some blitzing lanes. So, I mean, the Chiefs will take advantage collectively overall from him being outside.
All right, you're listening to the program Sports Radio 810 WHB on this Labor Day. My name is Brad Porter, filling in for Seren Petro. Our guest is Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. We're pretty confident in our defensive line, 100%, and that could allow some things to open up for the linebackers. Anthony Hitchens, I think, is what we call a known commodity, although he lost weight this offseason. He's faster. It's just also a matter of where he's at in terms of the aging process. He's been around for a while. Willie Gay is hurt, not going to have him. Nick Bolton's a rookie out of Missouri. How much will the Chiefs rely on him? Andy Reid said today he's earned snaps and he's going to be out there. We're not sure if that'll be as a starter or just coming in. And then, of course, you have Ben Neiman. We pretty much know what Ben Neiman is. He's a reliable guy. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Is he a world beater? Is he an all-pro? No, he's never going to be. But we know what he is. The coaching staff knows what he is. And in Dorian O'Daniel, you know what you got. Are you feeling good about the linebacker group, as good as you feel about the defensive line group?
I would, if Willie Gay was healthy out there without the toe injury, I would be a lot more confident with where they were at. Because athletically, when it was Gay, Hitchens, and Bolton out there, that was just a significantly improved linebacking group under Steve Spagnuolo in terms of how they moved, how fluid they moved, their coverage, how they were covering out of the backfield, what their drops were in zone, the confidence of what they were seeing in front of them, how to read and react to it. There wasn't hesitation. There wasn't this long downhill run. It was quick. It was decisive. It was swift. So from that aspect of it, I mean, when those three were on the field, I really enjoyed what I saw out there. Now, taking Willie Gay away, that's gonna hurt a great deal because he was probably the most athletic of the three, and he looked really confident out there this year, and he looked more confident in where he was dropping in the zones versus last year. Because I think Willie even admitted it during some of the press conferences that he was trying to learn the system and the scheme, and he was following the quarterback's eyes too much, and that was causing him a lot of problems. And this year, he was just going out there and reacting, which for him is. That's all he needs with that athletic ability. So to not have him is certainly going to hurt the defense a little bit more. They're going to have to scheme around it, and they'll probably have to have Ben Neiman out there for a lot more of that. And Neiman lacks some athletic ability. I mean, he's a guy who has the football IQ and knows where to get to. It's just sometimes he's not athletically, his body won't allow him to adjust to be able to help with what his mind knows and sees, and technique-wise, it's not always there. So there'll be some hiccups there until Willie Gay can come back and be healthy, but Anthony Hitchens looks better. Bolton's an improvement. So collectively in the linebacking group, it's better collectively this year than it's been under Steve Spagnuolo.
Well, with Willie Gay, a couple of things there. One, you mentioned he's not following the quarterback's eyes anymore. He's reacting, and that's one of the things we talk about all the time with great quarterbacks, whether it's Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Russell Westbrook. It's they look off defenders, and they get linebackers and defensive backs going the wrong way. They do it all the time, and that's a tough thing for a rookie to learn at this level. But you watch him this year, what we did see of him before he got hurt, I saw a guy, as you mentioned, just so athletic and so fast, and I was so excited to watch him play. And then we're going to have to wait. And turf toe is one of those injuries where it's, sometimes you have to have surgery with that. Sometimes it takes a long time to come back because obviously you can't be walking around on that foot.
Well, here's what I'll say. Technically, Andy's only called it a toe injury, so we don't definitively know 100% yet if it's turf toe or not. I'm hoping it's not. I hope it's just a sprain or something of that nature. But we technically don't know if it's that officially yet. But what I will say about Willie Gay, to illustrate how athletic he was and where he was at this year, Tyreek came across on a crossing route, had a full sprint, a clean release, didn't have a corner on him, and Willie Gay saw that. And once he came to his area, Willie picked him up in coverage and ran with him the entire way and then deflected the ball from Mahomes. Like, he shouldn't be able to do that at an almost 250-pound linebacker. Should not be able to stay step for step in Tyreek Hill's hip pocket and then be able to deflect the Patrick Mahomes football and just stretch out there with that arm. Like, that just showcases how athletic he is. Because when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness! Like, I mean, that's Tyreek with a full head of steam there. Like, that shouldn't. Corners can't even do that. Why is this 250-pound man doing that without a problem? So that just shows the athletic ability that guy has and why they took him as high as they did.
That's what we call hauling ass in the business. That's what
I didn't say it.
Well, I did. If I get in trouble, look, there's nobody's down the hallway. It's just me and Nathan in here right now, so that's all right. Quickly, and I promised you I was going to let you get onto offensive line because that's your I know that's your favorite thing to talk about. But real quickly, just walk me through the defensive backs. I'm comfortable with Charvarius Ward gets better and better and better every year. What a huge pickup a couple of years ago when the Cowboys didn't want him and Brett Veach jumped all over him. Tyrann Mathieu still a question mark. We'll know more Wednesday because he's in the COVID protocol. And we're probably looking at Daniel Sorensen, L'Jarius Sneed, who I thought exploded last year. And then your depth guys and Mike Hughes, who made this roster probably at the end. Armani Watts is a guy who's been around but has not done enough to get a lot of playing time. He's a special teams guy. Juan Thornhill has struggled in this preseason. Rashad Fenton and DeAndre Baker. So do you like not only the starting core, but the depth in the defensive backfield?
I'd say it's the corner spot. I'm really excited to kind of see once Mike Hughes gets comfortable in the system, what he's able to do outside. And Ward there hasn't been hiccups with Ward in training camp. He's been very quiet. So whenever a corner's very quiet, just like offensive line, if you don't hear their name, that's a really good thing. Because that means that they're in good position and they're making things happen. And then obviously Sneed, he provides the versatility inside if they need him in a nickel or dime spot, or if they want him outside or play at safety. He's capable of doing all that. He's so athletic with that ability. And then DeAndre Baker, once he gets back up to full speed from his broken bone last year, like he's made some plays in camp, but I think once he kind of has a year behind him, I think he'll really kind of tap into that first-round potential that he had out of Georgia. And then having Fenton on top of that is also, I mean, this is one of the better cornerback groups I think they've had from a safety position. Look, Mathieu and Thornhill would make the safety position go, and they're crucial parts of this defense. So if Thornhill can return to form from previously from his ACL surgery and doesn't have any issues with his range from being able to sharply cut and change direction, which I think he was still hesitant on, and I think he's past that point now. Then he'll get back to his playmaking ability. Matthew's insanely versatile, and Sorensen's a reliable guy that can help in the box. And then, like you said, Armani Watts, he really stepped up at safety because he knew that his job was on the line. So he gave everything he actually had, and he became a reliable force safety. But he's also a great special teamer. Mm-hmm. And the other guy I didn't mention, Chris Lamb is an awesome gunner, and he's really good on special teams. That's why they gave him a roster spot, because if they had waived him, somebody that was in a comfortable spot that needed a strong special teams performer would have went out and probably claimed him. If
I remember right, I think somebody commented the other day on Twitter that what is Chris Lemons doing on his team? He's a special teamer. I just don't see it. And Tyrann Mathieu tweeted back at him, if you don't see it, then that means you don't know what you're talking about. So I'm glad you brought up Lemons, because underrated and not going to get a lot of attention, but you need players who can do that. We're speaking with Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. I've done a good job of making sure I get the new label for your channel correct, because I messed up in the first opening of the show, and Aaron Ladd had to correct me on it. So the last couple of minutes here, like I said, I know you love talking offensive line, so I'm going to let you roll here. The experience is on the left side with Orlando Brown and Joe Toomey. Then you got three rookies with Creed Humphrey, who I think has been destroying people in the middle. Trey Smith at right guard, Lucas Niang, who was drafted last year but sat out, took the opt-out because of COVID. And we have not seen them play in a regular season game, which is going to be very different than a preseason game. But not only the starting five, but I think they have really good depth this season, something they did not have last year.
Yeah, I mean, this offensive line, it struggled with some of its starters last year, let alone, like you said, the depth that was behind it. So, I mean, Brett Veach went out there and did an extreme offensive line makeover, took out some cabinets, ripped up the floorboards,
right.
and just remodeled the whole thing. And you got a whole new offensive line, and a lot of those guys, the quality guys that should have been depth last year that were starters are now correctly depth where they need to be. And it'll be really interesting to see what they can do. The additions of Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith are so massive that people will understand by the end of the year why they went out and drafted both of those guys. But if Trey had been healthy, like that guy is just first round talent. Like, I mean, if he didn't have any health issues and blood clots there when he was at Tennessee, like he would have been a first round pick. He's just that dominant, that powerful, that athletic of an offensive lineman to where he's going to be a force for years to come. Creed is just such a strong man and from a wrestling background, and he's got a strong grip. He's able to lock in on guys. And whenever I was curious to see how he would do against Derek Nottie in training camp, and when he just stonewalled him right there, didn't have to hop and re-anchor or anything like that. I was like, that's one strong man, because Derek Nottie is one of the strongest guys on this team. And then when Trey held his own against Chris Jones, I was like, okay, we got some promise here. They went up two against the two of the best right there, so they're gold. So those guys did a fantastic job, and we'll see what Orlando Brown does. I'm curious to see how he does against some speed rushers here, and he'll have a good test against Cleveland with Garrett and Clowney. And then Joe Tooney, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, he's a reliable guy. I'm just curious to see how they're going to do against the A-gaps and some of the delayed blitzes and how they'll handle those collectively as a unit early on. And then Niang, he collectively got better as he got more reps during camp. So for that entire offensive line, they're a good group, and I like how they continually improved together during preseason. It never got worse. It progressively got better. So it's just a question of if Mahomes can trust that pocket, step up in there, or does he drift early on a little bit, that'll kind of determine what happens. But the fact Mahomes rarely got hit during training, during preseason games and training camp was a very, very delightful sight to see.
All right, Nick Jacobs, final question for you. We get to play for real this weekend. Chiefs, Cleveland Browns, Arrowhead Stadium, and I'm not even going to say the new name because I can't figure it out. I don't know if you're supposed to say the name or spell the name. I don't know. I'll figure it out at some point when I actually care. It's Arrowhead Stadium. That's what we got. So prediction for us, Arrowhead Stadium. You can give us a final score. You can just go with who wins. You can give us Patrick Mahomes throwing numbers, whatever you want. You pick something, and you give me a prediction for Sunday.
Just for you, since it's opening week, I will even give you a score.
Okay.
I don't like to do that, but I'm going to just for you.
Okay.
Because, but I think the Chiefs are going to beat the Browns. I think Andy and this team are going to come out early. I think they're going to be quick and decisive. I think they're going to have some strong drives early that the Browns are going to be a little lax on because the Browns didn't put in as many reps with their starters during preseason. So I think the Chiefs are going to be sharper than people realize. So, I mean, I expect them to comfortably win by 10. And, I mean, I could easily see that. Depending on Tyrann Mathieu, if he's in the game, I could see it being something like 34-17, 34-20. If he's not in the game, then I could see it being a little tighter to where maybe it is like a 34-24, 34-27 type of game.
All right. I like that prediction. The only downside to this game is that it doesn't start until 3:25. Oh, Nick, I cannot stand waking up early. You're getting ready for all the games. You watch the pregame show, and then they go to the noon kickoff, and you're like, oh, I still got 3.5 hours. Oh, well.
All I know is I'm not having to wait for 5 or 6 months like I had been. So
there
I'm
we
good.
go.
I'm
all
good to wait a whole 6 days.
Hey, Nick Jacobs, thank you very much. You and Todd Palmer do a great job on the 4th and 1 podcast over there at KSHB 41. Have fun this season. I'm sure we'll cross paths again somewhere down the road, and enjoy your Sunday with Chiefs football back.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Brad. Appreciate it as always.
All right, that is Nick Jacobs from KSHB41. Please give him a follow on Twitter at Jacobs71. Does a lot of good video breakdowns, and he does the eye in the sky stuff where he takes the up high cameras and breaks down what guys are doing. And the podcast he does with Todd Palmer, 4th and 1, is just terrific. So, Nick Jacobs, thank you very much for coming on the show. We will take a quick time out because I went a little bit long there. When we come back, Kevin Romery is going to join us from Lawrence, Kansas. He's covered the Jayhawks for a lot of years. That game Friday night was... We'll discuss it next. If it was great, I would have said so. It was not great. You're listening to the program, Sports Radio 810 WHB, and my name is Brad Porter, in for Seren Petro. Nathan Wilhelm is running the show, and we'll be back with more right after this. Hopefully you're enjoying your Labor Day around Kansas City in the Midwest as we're cranking out 50,000 watts. No days off here. My name is Brad Porter, filling in for Seren Petro on the program. Nathan Wilhelm is running the show. He's filling in for Jed Marshall and Curtis Seabolt, and you're doing 2 jobs at once, right, Nathan?
Yeah,
that sounds about right. By
Something
the way,
like
I feel terrible because I had to ask Nathan about the T-shirt that he's wearing. It's got a logo and it says bicycle repairman, and I couldn't place what it was. And then you told me what it was, and I felt stupid.
It was Monty Python skit.
Monty Python skit. Love Monty Python.
Everybody's dressed up like Superman, and then there's just one guy that his secret identity is bicycle repairman. He's just an average dude in a worker's jumpsuit.
Those guys are ridiculously brilliant.
It's the best.
Yes, it's awesome. Speaking of ridiculously talented, Kevin Romery joins us now here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Kevin, you got a day off, but you're doing a little work for us here.
A little bit. It's always good to do work this way. I prefer it this way. This is my style of working.
Well, I was joking. We were joking the last couple of days, texting back and forth. We never know where our conversations are going to go. We just started the segment talking about Monty Python's bicycle repairman. So that
should have been, and that should be in our wheelhouse. You know, we hear so many of these things where kids have all this new stuff, and I don't understand it. But Monty Python, it should be. That's you and me. That is our wheelhouse.
Oh yeah,
of when we were kids.
Well, you'll see it on Twitter all the time when an athlete comes out of a game injured, and then they're not sure if the athlete is coming back into the game, and somebody will post the GIF of the knight who's got his arms cut off and he's down to one leg, and he goes, "I still got one leg. Come on."
Oh, man.
It's just a flesh wound.
Yeah, it's really a flesh wound.
All right, Kevin, let's get into a couple of sports things, and then we'll open it up to whatever else. And we're not going to talk about anything that you tweeted back at me yesterday. I'm not.
No, that was complicated stuff, but it gets people thinking, I think.
Yes.
You know, what people these days think, we want them to think for themselves. And honestly, this is there's like 4 weeks a year that I just don't sleep. I'm super tired, and I'm right in the middle of one of those 2-week runs right now because I'm a tennis guy. And so I stay up late, so the night matches at the U.S. Open. I wish we could get tennis back in the Kansas City area. I know we had World Team Tennis for a little while. We used to go to those. It was really cool. They had it down in Barney Alice Plaza there for the Marriott. It was so much fun, and it never drew big crowds, and I get it. And the tennis crowds are small, but I'm in the middle of that. And so now with the U.S. Open going on, you know, they have these night matches. They always have a women's match and a men's match, and they're great. I wish they have the men's and women's finals at night. They need to do that too. But so I've been staying up really late the last week and a half, and the matches are only going to get better this week. So I won't get any sleep. And then the other 2 weeks, the same deal with the Australian Open.
Oh yeah,
because they're starting their day in our prime time, and so you're getting their afternoon matches. I mean, you could go all night. I mean, there are times where you go to sleep at 10 o'clock. And then you wake up at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and their night match is still going on. You wake up to live tennis. It's great. And I'm a tennis nerd. There's probably not that many out there. But if you're listening, I appreciate it, and I feel your pain. I'm sure you're just like me these 2 weeks. You're tired.
Well,
not sleeping very much right
I know
now.
Mark Carman, who used to work in radio in town, and now he's in Chicago. He's a guest of Seren's quite a bit on the 2-minute drill, and he's a huge tennis guy. And I'm a guy where, I'm not going to watch too many of the first couple of rounds, but when you get it whittled down, that's where I'm going to jump in. I'll be a front runner. I'm good saying that. But I think one of the women's matches got done at like 1:30 Central Time this morning, and one of the players, I'm going to mispronounce her name because I'm not reading it right now, but is it Zuragusa, Miragusa?
Yeah, she's go ahead.
And she's a really terrific player, but she got into it with her opponent after the game because her opponent was stopping the game for these medical timeouts, and it was right when she was getting rolling in a comeback, and then just shut that down. And then you get the other guy, and I cannot pronounce his name, Zik Porges or something. It's on the men's side is like one of the top two.
The first one, I think you're talking about Garbine Muguruza.
Yeah,
she's
that's
won a
who it
couple
was.
of majors.
Yeah, and now you have on the.
She's really good. So who on the men's side?
On the men's side, it's that guy. He's number 2 or 4 seeded. It starts with a T, but I don't think you pronounce the T. It's like Zagorgas or something. But he's taking these bathroom breaks every game that lasts 7 or 8 minutes. And
Tsitsipas?
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Tsitsipas, the Greek kid, he's a stud. You know, he took Novak to 5 at the French. He won the first 2 and lost the last 3. But he's starting to get this reputation of, and these bathroom breaks. Look, I get it, or whatever they are. But if you don't want to look like a bad guy doing these, you have to do it after you win a set, too.
Yes.
That's the problem here. And, no, you're exactly right. He's getting that reputation. And it was Andy Murray who called him out in the first round. And Andy's got, 3, I think, majors to his credit. And he's coming back. And who knows, if he had won that one, he might still be in this thing right now. It would be an incredible comeback story. But, yeah, but Stefanos, he's getting that reputation to where he's going from a guy that everybody really liked to, man, he needs to be careful. He's going to turn into a guy that everybody hates. And he was getting some boos in New York, that's for sure.
Well, he's in the bathroom for like 8 or 9 minutes, and there's speculation that he's sneaking a cell phone in there and he's calling his dad or his coach. And Andy Murray said after the game, he said, Jiminy Christmas, he was in there 8 or 9 minutes. Jeff Bezos went to space and back in less time. That was his joke. That was his joke.
Oh, that is dynamite. I didn't hear that, but that's a good joke.
Yeah, it is a good
one.
one.
That one.
I wish I would have thought of that. I wish I would have been that clever. We're speaking with Kevin Romery, and like I said, our conversations tend to go all over the map. So let me bring this up, since you've covered the Jayhawks for how many years? 30, 40 years? It's been covering for a long time.
I started going to school in 92.
Okay.
Went to every game was a student, and pretty much since then, yeah.
Well, this game this past Friday.
There's been some good times and a lot of bad times.
The game this past Friday, look, I get it. There's a new coach, and they don't have the roster the way they want it to yet.
A win is a win.
A win is a win.
Bradley.
I get all that.
Win, Bradley.
But
Come
I set aside time to watch it, and after about a quarter and a half, Kevin, I was like, it was kind of that old joke, but what the doctor said on the day you're born, boy, it's going to get ugly. That game was just awful to watch. I get it. Congratulations on the win. Everybody needs wins, but that was zero fun to watch.
I'll say this: congratulations for at least getting logged in to see the first quarter and a half. It drives me insane trying to get in ESPN Plus. I finally did it, and I'm trying to get it. I'm trying to mirror it to my TV or whatever. I'm old. Porter. So that's number one. I just want to flip on the channel, right?
Yeah.
Just let me flip on the channel, and that way during
TV
commercial breaks. And then on a commercial break, it's real easy for me to flip something else, and I can flip back. It's not that easy when you're trying to stream this stuff. As far as the game goes, yeah, it wasn't pretty. But, man, KU needed that win so bad. The number one, break this losing skid. And number two, I mean, it's going to be it this year, right? I mean, it's going to be 1-11 unless something crazy happens. There'll be a game or two in the Big 12. I feel like there always is.
Well, they still play Texas, right?
They still play Texas at least for one more year. There's a weird game, where you'll play better. And who knows with COVID? I say this, but maybe somebody almost gets COVIDed out and their quarterback's out and a receiver's out and a running back's out, and you catch a team just totally depleted. I mean, that could easily happen here. But for a new coach and a new program to come in and just win the first game, I don't care who it's against. And actually, they did win it in exciting fashion. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was real
a minute and a half to go, yeah.
Minute and a half to go, and you make the right plays. And I think that was important because I feel like if it had been one of the 4 coaches they've had in the last 10, 12 years since Mangino left, if it was Turner Gill, Charlie Weiss, David Beatty, or Les Miles, I feel like those teams, they made the mistakes in these games because they lost several of these, right? Lost to North Dakota State. You lost to South Dakota State. I mean, you lost to these teams in previous years.
Lost to
and
Rhode
not
Island.
To say that you lost to Rhode Island. How can you forget that one? I was on the field for that game.
Yes.
And North Dakota State and South Dakota State, they're good. South Dakota's not any good. This is one of the teams that's not very good in that conference up there. But to at least make the right decisions and not make a mistake to win a game. I mean, you didn't jump off sides, then call a timeout before fourth down, and then call another timeout to punt or whatever, like they've been doing in the previous years. Or, have 3 turnovers in the game to where you just didn't give yourself a chance. To where, this team, I think it was only like maybe 50 yards in penalties, which is pretty reasonable for a guy that's been the head coach for literally been with his team for 28 days or something stupid. I mean, he didn't get spring football. I mean, this is really different. And then at the end, even when you're very limited and you're not very talented, and to drop a couple of plays that actually work against a team that, South Dakota just played last spring. I didn't play much. They only got 4 games in, I think it was. I think they went 1-3 because they got COVIDed out a ton. But that was that conference, that division that moved its games to the spring. And so to think about how far South Dakota would have been ahead of Kansas just practicing, and I know there should be a huge talent disparity, right? Mm-hmm. There should be. And you and I have seen this for too long. But right now there's not. But I think at least there was a win to start it off. This week of practice will be good. Coastal is going to be a 30-point favorite, and Coastal will probably win by at least that. And it'll be, things are going to get bad for KU at times. But at least to get off to that start and at least feel a little bit better. I'll never forget walking off the field when Turner Gill lost his first game to North Dakota State 6-3. And that is about as bad as it gets. That's how the era started. We knew how it was going to finish, right?
Right.
So at least in 10 years, Brad, if we're still on the radio, on some sort of media entity, we can at least say the Lance Leipold era started off on a positive note with a nice win, with some nice plays at the end, to where at least you felt good walking out of the stadium on opening night.
100%. And one of the things you mentioned that I think that I keep an eye out, and it was particularly painful to watch during the David Beatty era, is coming out of a timeout and calling another timeout. Or a dead ball and then calling a timeout and then punting, as you mentioned. And I don't get the feeling we're going to see those things. Now, I've thought that before, and I've been wrong on that before, but it doesn't feel like those sort of silly, self-inflicted mistakes are going to keep happening.
Oh, yeah, it's control what you can control, right?
Yes.
Coach Leipold just arrived. He can't control the level of talent he has right now, right?
Right.
He can't change that immediately. But the one thing he can make sure is that his team is disciplined and that it's learning. And disciplined teams, Bill Snyder won how many games over more talented teams because he knew his team was more disciplined and drilled. So start there. Be the most disciplined team every single weekend. And you're not going to win all those right now. Clearly, KU is not going to win those. But at least that's a start. And then at least on these talk shows, we're not going to make jokes about on fourth down or whatever, calling a timeout when it's obvious what you should do. And then you come out of that timeout to go for it, and then you jump off sides, and then you have to bring your punting unit in. Or ridiculous stuff like that, right?
Yes.
And that's the kind of stuff you just got to get rid of. And I felt like, at least watching that game on Friday, I felt like a lot of that stuff had gotten removed from the game. And I think that's a testament to Coach Leipold to really be able to do some simple things, literally 20 whatever days of practice. That's it. That's all he's really had to this team. He did not get spring football. He was hired. Didn't he do a hit during the spring game? Mm-hmm. I think I recall. That's when he was basically introduced. And so I think some credit now, because there's a lot of heat coming, probably the next 11 weeks in a row. It's going to be rough. It's not going to be that much fun. So at least to start it off that way, I think it's a good start for everybody. Fans, the kids storm the field. I'm fine. I know it's not a great look, but you know what?
Do it.
Things have been terrible here, Brad, since 2008, 2009, whenever. So it's been bad.
You couldn't go to games last year, so I'm all for it. I don't have a problem. We're speaking with
absolutely.
We're speaking with Kevin Romery, covers all things Jayhawks. And Kevin, let me ask you, I don't want to open the whole can of worms on what's happening with the Big 12. Is it contracting? Is it expanding? But there are a couple of areas that I think we can delve into real quick. We've got about 5 minutes left. So when the initial announcement came out that Oklahoma and Texas were leaving, then the rumors start flying about what the other school's going to do. Would KU consider the Big Ten? Would Iowa State be a fit in the Big Ten? But Iowa State's not what you call an AAU school, the academic, whatever it is. So they could not go to the Big Ten. I thought KU and Iowa State would make a good fit, but Iowa State can't go there. Or maybe K-State can't go there.
They're not an AAU school?
K-State is not, but I think Iowa State is. I think you're right. So Iowa State and KU could be a good fit in the Big Ten. Or maybe they'll stay and add BYU and Houston and Cincinnati and maybe Memphis. I'm missing somebody here, but
UCF, Memphis, Houston,
yes, Central Florida. I mean,
Cincinnati,
yep.
BYU.
Yeah, so I don't know about Central Florida's kind of out on an island, so to speak. I mean, not literally.
They need to just choose one airline and then use it a lot because they'll have free tickets forever.
Yes,
with the travel that they'll have to do. This is a weird one. If the Big 12 is going to stay a conference, then clearly you're going to have to do this. But I'm just not sure can you really trust, Brad, everybody else that's still going to be in the Big 12? I mean, if KU, even if KU signs on and says, yeah, we're in this, if the Big Ten changes its mind and in a month calls you, you can't tell them no. I don't care what the penalty is for leaving. And the same goes for any team that might be interested in the Pac-12. If anybody else comes from then one of those other, I hate to say it, the 4 power conferences now, because it's clearly not going to be the 5 power conferences anymore, then I don't care what promises you've made. You've got to go. Now, if those other conferences have clearly said we're never inviting you, and it makes no sense for us to add any of those schools because it clearly doesn't add value in any certain way, then I think adding these schools makes sense and it's fine. But imagine being one of these other schools, though, and you say yes to the Big 12 and join it, and then in 3 years, 6 of those other, 4 Big 12 teams go to the Pac-12, and then KU and Iowa State go to the Big 10. And what did they do to themselves in this situation? It's a mess.
I don't know. A mess. There are people who get paid a lot more than me to figure it out, and I don't think they have it even close to figured out.
No, I mean, if you're in one of the power conferences, we always criticize Missouri, and Missouri got into the SEC strictly because, in my opinion, one thing, geography. They needed an even number, and they just happened to be the next school that was in line there. Because if it came down to these same conversations, and the SEC was asking this now, they'd be saying, well, does Missouri bring more money to the conference? I mean, clearly the answer to that is no. Missouri's not bringing more money. But at the time, we all thought it was the race to get to 16, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was what was important. I don't remember having the money talk near as much now as we did then as we do now. I feel like it's more money and value. Then it was, what are the best teams you can get to you to 16 is what I felt like the conversation was. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brad. Maybe I'm missing something here. But I feel like the conversation for adding teams has changed a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It was kind of funny how when Oklahoma and Texas, when the story first got out there before they made it official, oh no, we're not looking around, and then like literally one day, 48 hours later, we're leaving. It's a shame. I get it. I get it, but
let me ask you this though.
Yeah,
let me ask you this.
I got about a minute left.
We'll do it quick. The teams that have bolted, they're making more money. Has it improved them? And outside of just making a few more $1 million, how's this really going to help Texas and Oklahoma?
Texas is going to get their ass kicked every time they play Alabama. And that's the bottom line. They're not, and sorry, I'm going to go on a rein here. Texas is not going down to the SEC and going to do more in that conference than they've done in the Big 12 because they haven't done jack lately in the Big 12. They think they're going down to the SEC and they're going to show everybody how it's done? Not a chance. Oklahoma's got a chance. Maybe they do. Texas, get over yourself.
They already make the most money, though, these two schools. They're two of the top 6. And so I don't understand it either. And it's going to be harder for both of them to make it into the tournaments that they want to get into. You lose all your rivalries. I mean, for you and me, $10 million more a year than what we're doing now is a lot. But if you and I were making $100 million a year, and they said, hey, for another $10 million, you want to do this and that, I don't get it. I just don't. I don't understand it fully. I don't know why you'd want to say goodbye to all the rivalries and this and that. And especially when you can control everything. And so maybe I'm totally missing something. But man, Missouri, I mean, does anybody care about them? They're invisible in that conference. Totally invisible. Like Nebraska, totally invisible in the
Yep.
Big Ten. Texas, Oklahoma, they'll do fine in football. But, I mean, who cares? They're not going to, and it's about the coach. I mean, Alabama's dominant now, but as soon as Saban's gone, we'll see what happens there. And you get the right coach, and Texas has proven it. Texas has more money than anybody, and they cannot get it right.
Nope.
They cannot get it right. I don't know how they're going to start getting it right because they're going to the SEC.
Well, Kevin, thank you for letting me vent my spleen a little bit there.
No, next week we'll get back to the topics I mentioned on there. It was it was mask or no mask, Texas abortion rights, and Afghanistan withdrawal. We'll get to those next week, but we like to save the big topics for other conversations.
Yeah, we definitely want to dig into vax versus anti-vax because that's now apparently you can't even talk about it at the dinner table. I'm like,
we'll solve that. We'll solve that in about 10 minutes.
We'll do that. We'll get it solved. Hey, Kevin, thank you very much. It's always a lot of fun to have you on the show. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's our good friend Kevin Romery from Lawrence, Kansas, talking a little Jayhawks and a little Big 12. And I went a little bit crazy going off on Texas, but that's okay. They can deal with it because it doesn't matter. What I say about them doesn't matter to them. We'll take a time out here. It's coming up here at the 4 o'clock hour. Our good friend Blaine Howard, country music singer and songwriter. He's coming to Kansas City September 9th. He's going to have a new Chiefs song coming out. He's also got some new hits out. So we'll talk to Blaine Howard coming up next. You're listening to the program. My name is Brad Porter in for Seren Petro, and you're on Sports Radio 810 WHB.